Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill. Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are excited to have our guest, Eric Obremt, the president and owner of D&M Roofing and Sighting, and also the host of the Be Authentic or GTFO podcast. So welcome to the podcast today, Eric. Super stoked to have you join us today.
Thanks, Mike. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, you and I met at RoofCon just a few weeks back, or maybe a month ago now, and I was impressed by your message. And you were a keynote, one of the speakers there, and just really enjoyed hearing from you. Learned that you have a podcast as well, so thought it would be fun to have you come on and join us and talk a little bit about what you're doing over there.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me, man. This is going to be fun. That was a fun event. I'm glad I got to meet a lot of cool people there.
Yeah, it was great. So tell me this, your podcast is about being authentic. I mean, what and why is authenticity so important to you and everything you're about?
Well, so it's funny. I've told this story a few times and talking about kind of where it originated from. I was on a retreat a few years ago, and I was just getting into kind of maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I get screwed up with time because of COVID. Like, I think things were like 2 years ago, and then I'm like, wait, no, it wasn't. But it was maybe like 4 years ago. And I remember I was at this retreat with Sam Taggart, and we had to do this little exercise where he was giving out words or something like that into small groups. And they all had to start with an A. I don't remember the specifics of it, but somebody else in my group got the word authentic. And I don't remember what I got. And I remember looking at the guy and I was like, nope, that's not your word. And he was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, yeah, I'm taking it. Like, I'm going to be a bully. Sorry. But like, you don't get it. And so I literally took the word from him. And the whole thing that we had to do was we had to then go research the word and like do a little 5-minute presentation. Right. And so I did that. And when I got done, I was like, this is like my thing. And I didn't really understand it. I didn't know why. And then I was on somebody else's podcast, Matthew Mulholland, on Listen to This Bull. And at the end of the episode, I was in the little green room, right, on StreamYard, and we were just kind of talking off camera. And he thanked me. And I was like, for what? I was like, I wasn't that good. And he was like, no, man. He's like, I wanted to thank you for being the same dude on camera as you are off camera. And I just kind of sat there for a minute and I was like, is that not a thing? And he was like, no, not at all. He's like, that's never a thing. And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't realize that. And it got me to thinking that there's so many people out there that are pretending to try to be somebody else. And I had this voice and I had this, this reach, and I had access to people. And I was like, I want to do something to show people that it's okay to be you, and it's okay to be who you are and who you want to be. And maybe you're still trying to find out who that is, but that's okay. And you don't have to be Mike, and you don't have to be, you don't have to be Gary V, and you don't have to be, all these other people that we're watching and trying to emulate. You don't have to be those people. You can be you, right? And I'm authentically me, which, for better or worse, it makes people either very attracted to me or very fucking put off, right? Because I say what I want when I want, and if that means I'm not invited to a party, that's really okay, right? There's a lot of shows that won't have me on because of how I speak. That's okay. That's not my audience then, right? Like, those aren't my people. When I started the podcast, I had to think about business as well, right? And I had to think about, are my clients going to be watching this? Right. I had to think about that for a minute, and I had to have a conversation with myself and go, okay, am I going to restrict the things that I talk about, whether it's being in recovery, right? If it's about being sober, if it's about, or just, just talking, right? And telling stories that maybe you worry about a client hearing. And I was like, well, if that person thinks less of me and changes their opinion of me because of what I'm putting out into the world, because it's not negative, nothing I put out into the world is negative, right? Then you know what? That probably wasn't my client to begin with, and I don't really want to work with them. And I decided that I was okay with that. And I think that that is something that if people start embracing, I think it can really make a change in your life. And that's why I've become so passionate about it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It was very, again, I was in an audience. I don't know how many thousands of people there were. There were a lot of people in that room, and I would say generally, it let it let everybody else kind of relax and be themselves as well, regardless of if they speak like you or they think like you. I feel like it was refreshing for them and me in the audience. Even if I speak differently, it was cool, right? It was real.
Right. I wasn't trying to pretend to be somebody else. I had a message, and I always give a disclaimer before I speak. And I say, hey, look, everybody, I'm going to curse. Please don't let that distract you from the message that I'm trying to bring. It's just who I authentically am. And if I try to deliver my message in a different way, it's not going to land the way that I want it to land, right? It doesn't mean that I'm always not continuously working on my speech patterns and my rhythms and what I mean, all that kind of stuff to make sure that I have the most impact. I'm not just running around going fuckity fuck. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I'm trying to do, right? But if that organically comes out, that's just part of who I am. And I've gotten really excited about that presentation that you got to see about speaking about the team method, because it was funny. I worked on that for 3 or 4 months, right? And then I sat down and I said, okay, I know you do all these things, but are you being intentional about it in your business? Right? And I had to self-reflect and go, wait a minute, you talk about this one, but you kind of half-ass that one. So let's go in, like you're teaching this to people. Maybe you need to double down, Eric, and get a little bit better at this. And I did. And I literally went home and I was like, hey guys, I spoke about this. I'm teaching other people to do this, but I don't think I do a good enough job at this. Right. And I started going all in. I started talking about guys about meaning and all the different things that are in that team method. And I'm like, what can I do to bring more meaning into your life? And the reaction that I got from it was like, man, thank you. Like it was a really cool thing when you get to do these things. At first you think that you're doing it for all these other people, which you are, right? But then all of a sudden you get to self-reflect a little bit and you're like, ooh, it gives me an opportunity to get better too.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned work and business. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you own a roofing and siding company. You obviously speak publicly, you got a podcast, you got a lot going on. But how does this authenticity affect you at work and with clients and with your employees? I mean, what does that do for them and you in that engagement?
So I think that the biggest thing that I found is it gives me the opportunity inside of my company to retain staff and to retain the right people. I have a placard, like most people have a Eric Obremt, president, CEO, right, sitting on their deal. I have a placard that my sister-in-law bought me about 4 years ago that I sit on the front of my desk if I'm doing an interview, and it says, "Fucker in charge of you fucking fucks." And it's hilarious, right? Like obviously it's a joke and like I don't act like that, whatever. But I put it there so when I'm doing an interview, when somebody walks in and they see it and they're like, "That's hilarious." I'm like, "All right, sit down. Let's finish the interview." And if they walk in and if they go, "Ew, oh my God," right? And I get that reaction, I'm like, "You know what? You're not going to fit in here." And it gives me the opportunity to be like, "You know what? I'm not going to waste your time and not going to waste mine." And because of that, I've built this culture inside of my company and building a new one, right? Because I'm opening up a new branch down in Houston right now because we moved here. And I've built this culture of family, of empathy, of understanding and authenticity. And everybody gets to learn who they are and they're okay with it. and everybody else's. And we do exercises, right? We do exercises every month for personal growth stuff. We just did one where you learned your color, right? It's some test my ops gal came up with or found. She was in the military, and we all got to find out what made every person a little bit different, right? And then that gave us the ability to understand how to communicate with them differently, because some people receive something differently than Bill does, than what Fred does. And I don't want anybody to change who they are just to communicate and navigate with me, right? I want to be able to have us have that empathy to be able to be authentic with each other. And it's given me the ability. I don't have a lot of turnover. It doesn't mean the sales guys don't come and go, and you know what I mean? Like that's normal, right? But we've built this culture of authenticity in our company that everybody is okay with who they are. And because of that, I retain staff, because what's the hardest thing when you're running a business?
Keeping
Hiring and
people.
firing, right?
Yeah.
It's the people, right? Because if we don't have people, we don't have a business. We just have a job, and you got to do everything. And it's not what I want. I did that, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously for you, that's exactly what I mean, that's the American dream, right? You want to build something that you can be proud of, that really emulates who and what you are and what you stand for. And it sounds like you're doing a really good job in finding success at taking that approach.
Trying. Yeah, just every day, right? Every day you try a little bit harder. Get 1% better, they say.
I love that. So tell me this: how does this bleed over into your personal life and at home? Have you taken the same approach? What do you have to do to adapt that?
Yeah, I absolutely have. And that was some work that I did with my coach, because I would absolutely do a lot of these things at work, and I thought in my mind that they were work specific, right? And then I would come home and I would kind of disconnect from that all the theories and the leadership things that I was, trying to do. And I was like, well, I'm home now. And I would take those relationships for granted, and I wouldn't put in the same time and effort that I would put into my work relationships. And I was literally working with my like life coach guy on that, and we were talking about it, and he's like, why the hell aren't you doing these same things at home? And I'm like, I don't know. Right? Like,
Wait, is
I
it
didn't,
supposed to do
yeah, I
that?
was like, fuck, I don't know. I'm like, I guess I should, huh? And he's like, yeah, you should. And I was like, okay. And I did that. And I started, having those kind of conversations with my wife, with my 7-year-old, right? In teaching her to stand up and be who she is, and that she doesn't have to be like her little friend, over in the corner doing this. I'm like, you're good at this, so you focus on that. And honestly, like in the last year and a half, 2 years that we've done that, it's completely changed our family dynamic, as well. It doesn't mean that you can reach everybody, right? I know Ed Milet talks about that a lot, right? Like, like you're not going to change everybody in your family, but the ones that watch you and want to be that better version of themselves, right? Because I feel like that's my mission, is to figure out, especially whether it's in work or recovery, right? Because obviously that's a big part of my background and what I do now, but is trying to help people become the person that they were actually born to be, and not a better version of themselves. I hate that. I hate that phrase, but to become the human that they were supposed to be. I wasn't supposed to be that piece of shit that I was for 20 years, right? Drinking and using people, and you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't supposed to be that person. But I didn't know that, and I didn't understand that until I was able to come through it. And then I was like, oh wait, that's not who I was that's not who I was meant to be. I was meant to help, and I was meant to do all these other things so that I can leave this legacy on the table when they finally dig my hole. And that's, and that's completely changed my life, and my hope is that it's changed other people's lives that are around me.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. And like you, I'm a big Ed Milet fan. I just love so much of his messaging and his leadership. He talks about being the one, right? That, changes the trajectory of his family. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, no, I don't need to be the best version of my life. It's like, I need to be who I'm supposed to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have that opportunity, right? We all have that opportunity. My I guess, and if I would have heard that story in the beginning, I would have been like, oh, that was my grandpa, right? Like my grandpa was the one that changed and blah, 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 blah. But the more I started thinking about it, I was like, no, because, and again, this isn't like a dig on my grandpa, because without my grandpa, I wouldn't be where I am today, right? But my grandpa busted his ass and worked so hard for so long and still only had a job, right? And it was still, I was still taught going to school, right? That you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a job. And when I finally realized that, like, going to school teaches you how to be a good employee, they don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. And I was like, if I'm going to be a business owner, I need to surround myself with different people that I can learn from and go to school on how to be a business owner and how to be an entrepreneur and a leader of people, right? A leader of men and women and whatever, and not just read a book and hopefully get a check. And once I did that, that made me realize that maybe I'm the one that's going to change that family trajectory.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out, because I think that, I mean, to me personally, and I think we have some similar approaches to things in life, you and I. But when I think about, being the one, I think that's all of us. Like, it's not for somebody else. It's not someone else's job. You got one job, and that's to be, it's like, getting back to, Andy Frisella, and you're the CEO of yourself, right? Like, you're in charge of what you make of this experience. And so I think not passing the buck and looking for somebody else to be the leader or the person that, makes this difference is, it's just a cop out, right?
I've had moments of that, right? I've got a couple other businesses that I'm involved in, and I recently just kind of had this epiphany. I was like, man, I'm letting you guys dictate how this goes, because I've never had partners before in anything. And recently I got involved in a business where I have partners, and I was like, 5, 6 months into it, I was like, wait a minute, why am I letting you steer the ship and deciding what happens here? Not meaning like that I'm pushing anybody out or away or whatever, but it's like, just insert yourself, man. Go take control of what's going to happen on everything that you have control over, and own your shit, own your role, own your shit, right? I mean, that's for anybody, whether it's an employee or a business owner or whatever it is. Own your department, own your shit, own your, you know what I mean? Own your outcome.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. So when you think to yourself, okay, I'm being authentic to me, I'm being, this person that I'm supposed to be. What does that mean to you? Like, when do you find yourself not being that? And what do you do to pull yourself out of that?
There's not a lot of times that I don't find myself anymore being authentic to who I am. I definitely did that a lot though in the past. I did that a lot in the past. Yeah, I'll catch myself, um, because I'm involved in so many different groups, and so many different groups of people, that I will catch myself. I don't want to say agreeing, but not being myself in those groups, because I don't want to necessarily offend is the wrong word, but push away maybe. And you have to do a lot of self-reflection. So to answer your question of what do you do when you're in that moment, is for me it's being self-aware, right? And being self-aware in that moment of, are you are you pretending to be something, even just in a fleeting minute, right? In a fleeting second, are you pretending to be somebody else so that you feel like you fit in, or that you feel like you aren't rocking the boat, because nothing amazing got done by not rocking the boat, right? Ever. And when I start having those moments of, hey, I'm following instead of leading. And again, there's nothing wrong with following, but like, if I'm in that moment of I shouldn't be following, I have to be self-aware enough to have a conversation with myself to say, hey, stop it. Right. And so the goal for me is, how quick do I catch it now? How quick do I catch it? Does it take me a week, or does it take me an hour, or does it take me 10 minutes? And as I've lowered that time frame, that's how I feel that I'm getting better, because I'll catch it and be like, "Oh, you're doing it. Don't do that." and then I'll stop myself.
So you lean into the resistance as opposed to, shy away from it, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Right. Yeah. I mean, again, it's cliches and we've all heard them, especially people that listen, but it's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? Like it's okay.
yeah, I saw a cartoon, little, meme type thing the other day. It was actually pretty interesting. Never seen it before. And it showed this audience of candles. And there was this light bulb, like with legs, going up to speak in front of everybody and share their idea. And it said below, and they were basically talking down to the light bulb. And it said below, they will all criticize you for being different no
Mm,
matter how good your idea is. And it was like, oh wow, like,
right.
isn't that amazing?
Right. Because they didn't come up with it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, not their idea, right? Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right. Yeah. It's good to have ideas.
So we, in this day and age, there's, social media, even LinkedIn, or I mean, there's all kinds of tools out there that we can hopefully project who we are and shine a brighter light on that. But there's a lot of inauthenticity out there also, where people are playing a role and doing what they think they're supposed to do. What what is your thought on using those tools the right way, and what do people do to avoid falling into that trap? If you have any
If you're
advice.
if you're if you're doing it for yourself, you're wrong. Right? If you're doing it to help other people, then you're moving in the right direction and you're going to reap rewards eventually. I can't tell you the time frame, right? But if you're doing it to genuinely help other people as a leader, that's how you win, right? I think that social media, um, God, it's such a double-edged sword because social media gives me this platform to be able to help, hopefully, right? To be able to help and to be able to give some wisdom from the decades of dumb shit that I've done, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we're not teaching people or helping people based off of something that we just came up with sitting in front of a computer and started typing, right? And if you did, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. But if you came up with these things that you want to be able to help people with because of experiences that you already had, now there's something to that, right? There's bite to that. I went through a lot of shit, business failures, alcoholism, rehab, right? Like, I went through all these different things to get to where I am. So I feel like I have a little bit of authority to be able to have these conversations, to give some advice, to hopefully help somebody. But on the flip side of that, there's other people that see social media as this platform to be able to only reap rewards and to figure out how to manipulate other people so that they can either monetize or they can, whatever it is. Like, I'm not against monetizing. I love money. I want to monetize eventually, what I'm doing as well, but not solely for the benefit of that, right? That should come secondary. People who start with the idea of monetization first are going to fail eventually every time because they're going to be found out, right? And that's something that I talked about a lot in that speech, is that you will get found out, right? You will get found out that you are this other person. Eventually it will happen and it won't be pretty.
Yeah, and we talked about Ed Milet before, and obviously John Maxwell was one of the speakers, a keynote. Boy, what an amazing man he is. And as I look at men like that who have obviously been wildly successful financially, especially like Ed, he doesn't need to do this. He doesn't need to, do any of the stuff, his podcast, his books. He doesn't need any of the money. His grandchildren, great grandchildren, 20 generations could be fine with the wealth that he's amassed. And yet I think he's up earlier, grinding harder, doing more. I think he's the best he's ever been, and he's only getting better, right?
Yep. Because it fulfills him. Because it fulfills him. And if we find things that fulfill us, like that's I literally I just got back from vacation. Literally last night I was in Grand Cayman for about 10 days, and we were down there with family, or we have family that live down there. And I was down there scuba diving and doing all the stuff that I love to do. And I've been doing all this stuff, right? Like you said in the beginning, I've been speaking, I've been doing the podcast, I've been traveling, I've been, blah, 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 I do all this shit. And I was like, man, why do you keep doing it? Like you have those moments, right? Like, why do I keep doing this shit? Right. Like you just feel like you're spinning in circles. And I came up with this idea. My brother-in-law helped me kind of manifest the idea. And I was like, why don't I figure out the things that I love doing to bring other men around me so that we can go do these things and become better and not let somebody else dictate what it is that we're doing. And I was like, okay, what do I love doing? And I'm like, I love being on the water. I love water sports. I love scuba diving. I love meditation. I love mindful meditation. I love breathing. I love, like all these different things that have made me better from the experiences that I've had over the last, 5 years. And I was like, well, fuck it. I'm going to make my own group where we're going to go do that. Right. I'm not trying to be Hunter and go make this mastermind with, 50 people and whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to put a thing together and get 10 people, throw out applications because I'll vet them. I don't want people coming with me for 5 days to, Grand Cayman that I don't like or I don't think I'm going to like. Right. Or we don't align. That's the big word. Right. I want to align. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this platform to be able to recruit people to come be better with me. How awesome is that going to be? Right. And then use it as a platform to be able to give back to our nonprofit, to be able to give back to roofers in recovery. Well, shit, that's a win-win. Right. So like we literally came up with it over the last week. And today, after I'm announcing it now, but today I'm going to go live. I'm going to do a post today and I'm going to announce it that we're going to start taking applications at the first of the year. Right. Because that's how we hold ourselves accountable. Right. Use social media, put it out there. And now you're screwed, right? Like
you got to do it.
You put it out to the world, so now you got to own your shit. So I'm really excited about that, and I think that's what we're here to do is to help the people around us, or invite people into our circle to be able to help make them a little bit better.
Yeah, that's amazing, and congratulations on the idea and putting it together and actually getting ready to pull that trigger. That sounds like it's going to be amazing.
It's scary, but yeah, we're going to do it.
Well, if it's not scary, it's probably not worth doing, right? Yeah. Well, in fact, I noticed when you were speaking, you had a Lions Not Sheep hat on, and I know Sean Whalen as well, and he's got some similar things going on. And another common friend, Ryan Mickler, that runs the Order of Man podcast and movement, similar thing. That those guys, same exact thing. They were looking for something, they couldn't find it, and so they created it, they built it, and now they're blessing the lives of countless others because of it. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and who am I? I'm not fucking Sean Whalen. I'm not, I'm not any of those guys. But I can be me. And you know what I mean? Maybe I'll get a cool fucking hat that people wear when they go do a speech somewhere. I don't know. We'll see.
That's right. You can always have the goal.
Yes.
So now getting back to what we were just talking about, this stuff all looks good on paper. It's easy to say, and in a moment, it's easy to do. Can you think of any times that you chose to be authentically yourself, and maybe it was painful, or it didn't, the optics weren't good from a worldly perspective? The world would say, you're an idiot. Why would you do that? Just take the money or take the thing or do the thing, whatever it is. Can you think of any experiences where you kind of made the right decision to be authentic, and maybe it blessed you later when you really had decided, I'm willing to walk away from this versus, I'm just going to take the easy route and, fake it till I make it.
I think the best example of that I can that I can say is, and I think this is something that people need to do every day, is again a lot of my advice comes from my sobriety and my recovery and doing the 12 steps, right? But it comes down to doing the next right thing, no matter the consequences, right? And I have on numerous occasions, right? We own businesses, whether you're in the trades or whatever. I'm in roofing, right? And what happens in roofing? You do 500 jobs a year, and how many of them go bad? I don't know. Maybe you have 10, right? Maybe you have 10 that don't go the way that you wanted them to go, and you've got pissed off client or whatever it is, right? And some of those times it goes bad. But you take care of everything and they're still not okay, right? We all know that client as well. And there's times where you should hold your ground, right? And be like, hey, screw you. Like, we did everything right. Like, give me all the reviews you want. I don't give a shit. Like, we did everything the right way. I'm not going to, bend my morals or, my ethics for you because you're crazy. But there are times in those moments when things go wrong and you're in the wrong, but it's going to be a very expensive lesson. And you're like, I could fight this. I could walk away, right? And the thing that I have taught my people is that if we are ever in the wrong, no matter what the cost, we will make it right. And I've had numerous moments where I've done that, and it has hurt me very hard in the pocketbook, right? Hurt me very hard. And it would have been very easy to be like, nope, everybody else would have just walked away from this. Everybody else would have just walked away, kept the $5,000, $10,000, 50, whatever it is in their pocket, and been like, I could get away with this, right? Nobody will know. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to go spend $10,000 to come after me with an attorney or, whatever it is, right? And now it's funny because I've ingrained that into my staff so much that they don't even have to call me anymore to ask me what to do, right? They just send me an email and say, this happened, so I did this to make it right. And I think that I think that the end result is that I've changed them so much because some of these people came from other companies where they didn't do that, right? And they're like, oh, well, we could do it like this. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do here, right? And that's why we're going to be successful for a long term and not this short period of time, because we're always going to do the next right thing. To your question of how did it pay off in the end, it just does, right? There's no circumstance of like, I did this, so this happened, right? It's not an ROI thing, because the minute that you start thinking of it as an ROI thing, then you don't get it, right? Like, you don't get the point at that time. But if you think of it as this long-term, I hate using the word karma, but I mean, it's a karma thing, right? If you continue to do the right thing, then right things are going to happen to you. And if they don't, I'll still own that. That's okay, right? But I know that if I continuously do the next right thing, not only am I going to be okay with it, but my staff isn't going to feel gross like they work for this guy who is always trying to get over on somebody. Because if I try to do that to a client, I'm going to try to do that to them.
Oh, that's great, man. That's so good. So true. And to me, that's true leadership. That's where you're mentoring and helping guide and lead your company in a direction you could be proud of, and they could be proud of to be a part of it. Well, our conversation went so well with Eric that we decided that we would continue the rest of this conversation into next week's episode. So we're going to cut here in the middle and start fresh with the beginning of the second half next week. I'm sure that you are all excited for what we've heard so far, and I hope you tune back in to hear the rest of the conversation. Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.